In this video, we're focusing on the glutes and how they actually work during training. A lot of people train glutes consistently, follow programs, and still struggle to feel them working or see meaningful changes. In most cases, that isn't because they aren't training hard enough, but because small details in setup and execution are shifting the work away from the glutes and into other muscles. The lower back, the quads, and even momentum often end up doing more work than they should. When that happens, progress slows down and discomfort tends to increase. Understanding how the glutes function during hip extension is the foundation of effective lower body training. Body position, foot placement, range of motion, and control all influence how much tension the glutes actually receive. Even subtle adjustments can dramatically change which muscles are doing the work. In this video, we'll start with movements that place the highest mechanical tension on the glutes, then progress through variations that improve control, stability, and muscle awareness. As you watch, focus on how each exercise is set up, how the movement is controlled, and where the effort should be felt. These details are what separates simply performing exercises from actually training the glutes effectively. The first movements focus on pure hip extension, which is the primary role of the glutes. Here, the goal is learning control rather than adding load, keeping the torso stable so the hips do the work. By slowing the movement down and limiting momentum, the glutes are forced to stay under tension through the full range. This sets the foundation for everything that follows in the workout. This next section focuses on hip thrust variations, which are one of the most effective ways to load the glutes through hip extension. Here, the emphasis is on moving through a full range of motion while maintaining control at every point in the lift. As the hips lower, tension should stay on the glutes rather than relaxing at the bottom. Driving upward, the movement should come from pushing through the heels and extending the hips, not from arching the lower back. Keeping the ribs down and the core engaged helps maintain a neutral spine, which allows the glutes to stay as the primary working muscle. This controlled approach increases time under tension and improves how effectively the glutes are trained. As the set continues, fatigue starts to play a bigger role, which is where technique becomes even more important. Small changes in posture or speed can quickly shift the workload away from the glutes if control is lost. Maintaining a steady tempo and consistent positioning helps keep tension where it's intended. Pausing briefly near the top reinforces full hip extension and increases glute engagement without relying on momentum. Foot pressure should stay balanced through the heel, allowing the hips to drive the movement smoothly. Rather than focusing on the amount of weight being used, the priority here is quality of movement and control. This combination of range, stability, and tension is what makes these repetitions effective for glute development. As the reps slow down, this is where the glutes are forced to do the work instead of the joints. Staying patient in each repetition allows the muscle to stay loaded for longer, which is exactly what we want here. In this section, we're staying with the squat pattern to reinforce how the glutes work when the body stays upright and controlled. Rather than dropping quickly into the movement, the descent is slow and deliberate, allowing the hips to open while maintaining balance and tension. As you lower, the glutes lengthen under load, which is where a large portion of the stimulus comes from. The torso remains tall, the core stays braced, and the knees track naturally, creating a stable position at the bottom. This depth is important, because it places the glutes in a mechanically strong position to produce force on the way up. From the bottom, the movement begins by driving through the heels and midfoot, allowing the hips to rise without shifting forward. There is no rush out of the bottom, the emphasis is on control rather than speed. Each repetition looks the same, with consistent posture and tempo from start to finish. As fatigue builds, maintaining this structure becomes more challenging, which is why focus matters more than load here. By slowing the pace and removing momentum, the glutes are forced to stay active for the entire duration of the set. This is what turns a squat into a glute-dominant movement rather than a general lower body exercise. The goal is not to finish the reps quickly. Now we're moving into a machine-based movement, and this is where control matters even more. Even though the machine guides the path, the glutes only stay involved if you actively control the position of the hips and the speed of every repetition. Notice how the hips stay pressed firmly into the pad throughout the movement. The work comes from driving through the back of the legs, not swinging the weight or letting momentum take over. If you rush this movement, the tension immediately shifts away from the glutes and into momentum. That might make the set feel easier, but it also makes it far less effective. Instead, think about pulling the weight in with the hamstrings, then finishing each repetition by lightly squeezing the glutes at the end. That squeeze doesn't need to be aggressive. It just needs to be intentional and controlled. The range of motion here doesn't need to be extreme. What matters more is staying connected to the movement from start to finish, without letting the weight pull you out of position. As fatigue starts to build, this is where most people begin to lose control. You might feel the hips lifting slightly or the tempo speeding up without realizing it. When that happens, reset. Brace the core, press the hips down into the pad, and allow the reps to slow naturally. A slower tempo keeps constant tension on the glutes and hamstrings and prevents the lower back from taking over the movement. You should feel the muscles working continuously, not just at the start of each rep. Focus on keeping every repetition consistent. The first rep and the last rep should look the same, even if the last one feels much harder. Breathing matters here as well. Stay controlled, don't rush the transition between reps, and keep tension through the entire movement. The goal with this exercise isn't to move heavy weight. It's to maintain quality from beginning to end. When you stay patient and controlled like this, the muscles are forced to do the work instead of the joints. That's what makes this movement effective over time. Stay controlled, stay consistent, and make every repetition count before moving on. As the set continues, pay attention to whether the movement stays smooth and controlled. If you feel the weight start to pull you faster, slow it back down and re-establish tension. From here, we move into another long-range hip extension pattern, and the focus stays on keeping tension consistent through the entire movement. Even though the setup looks similar, this variation changes how the glutes are loaded, especially at the top and bottom of the rep. The key here is staying stable through the hips and controlling the leg path instead of letting the machine dictate the movement. As the leg extends, think about pushing through the heel and keeping the pelvis steady against the pad. You want the glutes doing the work, not the lower back arching to finish the rep. At the top, pause briefly and feel the contraction, then lower the weight slowly under control. The return phase matters just as much as the lift. If you let the weight drop too fast, you lose tension and the exercise becomes passive. As fatigue builds, it's normal for the range to shorten slightly, but the control should stay the same. Focus on smooth, repeatable reps rather than forcing extra range. This is another movement where tempo determines how effective it is. Slow, controlled reps keep constant tension on the glutes and prevent other muscles from taking over. Stay patient, keep breathing steady, and let the muscles do the work through the full set. As the set continues, stay aware of how the hips feel against the pad. If they start to shift or lift, slow the movement back down and re-establish control. This final stretch of the set is where maintaining tension matters most, even if the reps become smaller and slower. Finish the set with the same control you started with, keeping the movement smooth and intentional until the final rep. In this next section, the emphasis stays on hip extension but with a stronger focus on control at the top of the movement. Here, the glutes are working hardest when the hips are fully extended, not when the weight is moving quickly. As the hips rise, think about driving through the heels and keeping the ribs down so the movement stays in the hips, not the lower back. At the top, pause briefly and feel the glutes contract before lowering the weight under control. The descent should be slow and deliberate, allowing the glutes to stay loaded all the way down. If the hips drop too fast, tension is lost and the exercise becomes less effective. As fatigue builds, the range may shorten slightly, and that's fine. What matters is maintaining control and consistent positioning. Focus on smooth, repeatable reps rather than forcing speed or extra range. This is where quality matters more than quantity, especially toward the end of the set. From here, keep the same control as you move into the next exercise. As you move through this exercise, focus on keeping the hips steady and the movement controlled from start to finish. Set your stance first, then initiate every rep by pushing the hips back slightly before driving through the glutes. The weight should move because the hips extend, not because the legs rush the motion. As you lower into the rep, stay slow and controlled, resisting gravity rather than dropping into position. This controlled descent is where a lot of the glute work happens. At the bottom, maintain tension and avoid fully relaxing before starting the next repetition. As you drive back up, think about pushing the floor away and extending the hips smoothly. The glutes should finish the movement, not the lower back. If you feel yourself losing balance or speed increasing, slow the tempo rather than shortening the range. Each rep should look the same, even as fatigue builds. As the set continues, focus on breathing steadily and keeping the core engaged to support the hips. There's no need to rush here. Consistent tension and control will make this exercise far more effective. Stay patient, stay connected to the movement, and keep the quality high through every repetition. As the set goes on, stay aware of how the hips are moving through each repetition. Avoid letting the weight pull you out of position at the bottom, and don't rush the transition back up. Think about maintaining steady pressure through the feet and keeping the hips aligned as you move. If the reps start to feel harder, that's a sign the glutes are doing the work. Don't change the tempo to escape it. Keep the movement smooth and controlled, with no bouncing or jerking at any point. Each repetition should finish strong, with the glutes driving the motion and the body staying stable. Stay focused, keep the same rhythm, and carry that control all the way through to the end of the set. As you reach the final reps, keep the same focus on control and positioning. Don't rush to finish, let the reps slow naturally as the muscles fatigue. Stay tall through the torso, keep the hips steady, and continue driving the movement from the glutes. Even here, avoid swinging the weight or cutting the range short. Finish each repetition with intention, maintaining tension until the very last rep. Stay controlled all the way through, and complete the set with the same quality you started with.